What is good, everybody? I'm just pulling up some of my notes for the message today. So, this is an interesting one, and I invite you to think about an interesting scenario. So, in the morning, hypothetically speaking, when you wake up, do you hit snooze or do you get up immediately? Or better yet, do you have more than one snooze time set? What type of person are you? Just do a self check. Okay? Basically, how hard is it to get your attention? All right? Are you one of those people that just asked just 5 more minutes? The topic of this message is stay woke. Stay woke. I'm Juliana Page. If you've not met me before, if this is your first time on the channel, welcome. Thank you for checking out this video. You can learn more about me at julianapage.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Miss Juliana Page. But back to the message. Okay. Something, if you haven't been following me, you may not know that I am obsessed with transformation. I'm obsessed with self-mastery, but there's a lot of prereqs, if you will, to get to those levels. So for example, today, we're going to talk about the very first step to start embarking on real sustainable transformation and the journey of that, okay? So the first step is self-awareness, because here's the thing. This is why it's so important. Without self-awareness, these are the things that you're sacrificing, whether you're aware of it or not, really. So the first one is self-direction. You really don't know how to direct yourself well if you're not self-aware, right? You kind of happenstance through life, or when things happen, you direct yourself in the moment, but there's not a lot of intention behind that. There's not a lot of creativity, and there's likely not God behind that. Then, if you're not self-aware, how can you even practice self-control? My argument would be that you can't, right? If you're not aware, how can you control what's going on in your mind, how your emotions are flowing, what's being stored up in your heart, what type of spirit you're operating under, whether that's fear, doubt, worry, anxiety, depression, right? Also, you sacrifice self-esteem, because if you're not self-aware, it's very likely that you don't have a high esteem of yourself either. And then lastly, you also sacrifice authentic love and authentic loving. You can't really recognize what real love is. And you also aren't really good at giving it. A lot of times there's conditions, a lot of times it can be dysfunctional, and that can get messy. So if that's not enough, hopefully those are part of your why to wake up and to stay woke. So how do you begin really to express who you really are? How do you begin the process of actively becoming aware of who that actually is, and then intentionally expressing more and more of that each day? How do you do that? Where do you start? Oh my gosh, it sounds super complicated. It's not. Just not a lot of people talk about it, because primarily the focus is on everything that's external, right? It's the image, it's the gym, it's the career, it's the car, it's how many babies do you have? It's all these things, right? But not many people are talking about what's going on here. That's why we're shocked when we find out that it's actually more dark than we realize when people actually come to the surface and reveal what's really going on. So number one, how do you begin this process of becoming woke and staying woke? Number one is self-awakening. You have to have a self-awakening of some kind. Really, that means being able to look into your heart. Okay, there's a quote, it says this: "Who looks outside dreams, but who looks within awakens." That's deep, super deep. So as I mentioned, very few people actually look within. And I even resisted this for a long time. To me, it was scary to look within. To me, it was scary to be still, because I didn't want to think about what I was thinking about. I didn't want to process what I was feeling, and I didn't know what was going on in my heart. I learned how to repress. I learned how to be very private. I learned that we don't have problems. We just suck it up and keep it moving. But that was at my own detriment, really, because your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions. And so because I wasn't processing that, because I wasn't actively sifting through that, it came up later. So very few look within, but my encouragement is, even if you identify as one of those very few, that you would start looking within and stop being so focused on the outside. And that probably will require some consecration, some pulling away of some things for a season to do that. Usually, however, this requires a external objective agent, something outside of us that wakes us up, because usually when we're sleeping, we don't know that we're sleeping, right? We don't know sometimes. We don't know we're sleeping. We don't know we're snoring. We don't know if we're drooling, right? When you're asleep, you're asleep. So usually we need an objective agent of some kind to come shake us, to come wake us up, to come provoke us, okay? Often we hit the snooze button when the wake-up call comes, right? I know that I probably had several wake-up calls, but I did one of these 3 things, and you can identify how you've done this. You kill the messenger. So whoever is the person that's highlighting something to you or bringing it to your attention or confronting something, you kill the messenger, right? Like you cut off that connection, you decrease the access that they have, or you limit the access that they have. You could also justify your current position. Well, I'm here because, which is still a very much victim mindset, or you could just completely ignore it. So I definitely have probably done all of these in different seasons, right? But here is the really, really, really big thing to note. You can't reach the next level that we all talk about. We always want to go to that next level, but you cannot reach the next level if you don't wake up. You can't. If you keep hitting snooze, you'll waste your life. I don't know about you, but sleeping through life, it sounds nice. It sounds like there's no drama. It sounds like it's just peaceful and comfortable, right? But missing out on life is wasting your life. And you're not here to just sleep your life. Okay. Number 2 is self-confrontation. This one is real. Self-confrontation is where you must, because only you can do it, you must address areas in need of adjustment in your own life, usually in your own soul, okay? You've got to accept whatever it is for what it is. You got to accept that some of the stuff you've been thinking about has been pretty crappy. You got to accept that maybe you've been really emotional and that's why you keep getting stuck. You've got to accept that you had a really bad attitude or a really bad heart position. You got to accept that you've been submitting to a pessimistic, negative spirit. You've got to accept it for what it is and then apply yourself to making the adjustments daily. This is not like I applied myself and I'm over the hump. This is a daily process because our mind will grow weeds if it's left unattended, just like a garden, right? You can literally rip out all the weeds and then the very next day, there's a whole new patch for you to pull out, right? You know that you're woke when you see yourself. You can see yourself. Nothing changes until you do, though. Grow and mature to a point where you can self-analyze what's going on in your spirit, discern if it's good or bad, and have crucial conversations with yourself. Nobody can really do that. So you've got to really look at yourself and understand, is what I'm thinking about productive? Is what I'm thinking about in alignment with the truth? Is how I'm feeling reality? Right? It could just be my emotional home. I might be used to being stressed out, but I don't have to be. I'm still choosing that, but I don't have to be, right? If you don't confront yourself, you'll never control yourself. So that's where that self-control comes in. If you don't confront your own thoughts, you'll continue to produce behavior that undermines your destiny. You'll never maximize. So when we keep thinking the same things, we keep feeling the same way, we keep behaving the same way. So you've got to basically address the level of where the problem is starting, and that's in your mind, okay? And the great thing about this is if I can confront me, I can get me together before the world has an opportunity to confront me. So a lot of times we're afraid of putting stuff out there. We're afraid of all that because we don't want to be seen, because we know inherently what's really going on. But if you confront yourself, the world ain't got nothing on you, right? If you would, here's my thought for you. If you would just check yourself like you check everyone else, you'd never be bored a day in your life. And your job is not to check everyone else. Your job is to check yourself. Challenge every thought that comes through your mind, because if you know you also know that you're not trustworthy. You know that you think some weird things. You know that you're susceptible to temptation. You know that your feelings sometimes get the best of you. You know that you say some things that you can't take back. You know that you show up in ways that you regret. So challenge every thought that comes through your mind. Put boundaries and accountability in your life so you can keep your life steering down the path that it needs to go down. If we don't have accountability, if we don't have boundaries, it's really easy to lower ourselves. It's really easy to let a standard slide. It's really easy to let somebody talk us out of what we committed to. So you've got to be ruthless about confronting yourself. And then lastly is self-transformation. Self-transformation is about your character, and your character is not changed because you're aware. So if you just stay in the woke mode where you're just like, I'm awake, right? Your character is not going to change. Your character is alerted because you engage in a daily process of renewing your mind. You've got to begin uprooting thoughts and casting them out that shouldn't be there, and you've got to replace them with the truth. And you do this every day, and you're renewing your mind as you do that, okay? Transformation happens as you engage a daily practice of renewing your mind. We are transformed by the renewing of our mind. You really can't build a foundation of anything if your mind is still thinking the wrong stuff. Okay, so transformation happens as you engage a daily practice of renewing your mind. You can't get your life to transform until your mind is renewed. You have to commit yourself to the daily, keyword daily, process, okay? The reality is, I know that I just would like God to show up and just transform me. God, please just change me, right? Like that's a lovely thought. However, the reality is God has a part, but God's part doesn't start until we do our part. And I'll walk you through my own process, okay? Transformation is the personal and intentional work of renovating your life, starting with your mind. That is your job. Nobody can do that for you. Okay, so from your thoughts to your standards to your presentation, how you're thinking, what you align with, the way you navigate your life, and then how you present yourself to the world, right? So it's internal, external, right? So basically, what you do privately consistently is seen eventually publicly. The way you present yourself to the world, it's an internal process, then external. What shows up on the scene when you enter the world. So just keep this metaphor in mind, where you wake up and suddenly you stop pressing snooze. And then you go check yourself out in the mirror. You confront what's happening here. Okay, I need to take a shower. I need to wash my hair, comb my hair, put on some makeup, make myself presentable, maybe put some eye drops in if you've got red eye, whatever's going on with you. You get it straight before you go present yourself to the world. So it's similar with your soul. You check out, what are my thoughts, right? What's going on in my mind? Where are my emotions at? What's going on in my heart? What have I been thinking about? What have I been talking about? And you really assess that. Thoughts can change, standards can change, and your presentation can change. But you've got to commit daily to the process of evolving, okay? So I'll take you through a little journey just so you can use my example and apply it to your life. So step one, have a self-awakening, right? So my self-awakening, I was in a relationship and it was unhealthy. It was toxic. I didn't know what I was up against. I had no clue what spiritual warfare was. I was not walking with God at the time. I didn't even know I really could walk with God, if I'm honest, at the time. And I felt so defeated. I was so tired of achieving and feeling like I'm coming up short, or having relationships where I feel like I get blindsided, or I feel like there's a big blow, like the person is cheating, or the person is a deceiver, or the person is a narcissist, like that kind of stuff. I'm like, I've got to look at what's going on here. So I got to the point where I just could not take it anymore. It was heartbreaking and it was scary. It just really looking into the soul of somebody and seeing nothing but darkness. It was like nothing I've ever experienced in my life, and it freaked me out. And so I just remember being in a church setting and praying the salvation prayer as guided by the pastor at the time. And I remember crying, subtle, which was a big deal because I couldn't cry for the longest time. That was really foreign to me. I just didn't process what was going on. And I just remember it was a moment of surrender. It was a moment of just humbling myself. And it was, so I felt a shift in my spirit, but I didn't really comprehend what I did until very quickly after that, when my life got really spicy and I felt like I was in the fiery furnace. So that leads me to self-confrontation. I could no longer afford to say that, oh, well, I don't know God. I don't need a Bible, or I don't need to have a relationship with God, or, you know, I've been doing just fine up to this point. I can still self-navigate. I can still lean on my own understanding. I don't need to go to church all the time. I don't need all that stuff, right? Like, I couldn't deny that anymore, because I had this revelatory thought, which was, if I don't know the author of love, how am I ever going to be able to give love, but also recognize and receive love in a healthy way, right? So I couldn't let how I was raised, what I was exposed to, what I was taught, what I caught, whatever, I couldn't let all of that be an excuse anymore. It became too intolerable, right? The pain of all of that was too painful that I needed a change. I had to have a change. And so I was willing to confront whatever was not right within me, whatever was off, whatever I was allowing, whatever I was tolerating, whatever I wasn't looking at, whatever I was enabling, whatever I was partnering with, any of that. I had to investigate all of it. I had to look at what I was thinking. I had to look at what I was feeling. I had to look at what was going on in my heart. I had to look at, how did I allow this into my life? Why didn't I react or respond differently? Why didn't I cut it off here? Like, really look at what was going on there and start confronting this, so I could accept, yes, this sucks. Yes, this is bad. Yes, this is a low. Okay. But I'm going to apply myself to making these changes. And that was really practical. I had to have simple and practical. So it was, I'm going to go find a Bible and I'm going to read it. I'm going to get up every day. I'm going to have quiet time, because I'm hearing that you're supposed to seek the Lord diligently, and you're supposed to seek him early, and you're supposed to abide in the Lord. And I'm not doing any of those things. So how am I ever going to know God and understand God and hear God for myself? So I started doing that. I also got a devotional, and I started journaling, and I started figuring out how to pray, because I really had no clue. I had no clue if I was supposed to read something, write down a prayer, read it. Was I supposed to speak it out? What was I supposed to do? I had no idea. So I went through my own confronting and spiritual development process. Okay. Then self-transformation. Surely enough, a lot of things started changing about me, actually everything. So I no longer identified with who I thought I had to be, who I was told I should be, what I have to accomplish according to some worldly standard. I no longer partnered with what seemed attractive and charming. I would look at the spirit behind a thing, or I decided that serving was one of the most important things I could do with my time. And being in connection with God and praying for other people and walking through a healing process and growing and evolving. So I plugged myself into service. I became a prayer warrior, which was so weird. I'd never prayed before in my life. This was insane. And I started writing and publishing books, and I was on a whole new process. I was creating. I was inspired. I had passion. I knew who I was. I started understanding the full armor of God. I started understanding the purpose and the call and the plan for my life. I started walking in my authority, and I started changing everything. No longer did I settle for what was making me feel awful. No longer did I think these thoughts that weren't in alignment with what God says about me, because I can't afford to have a thought in my mind that God doesn't think about me, right? So I went on this process. So everything about me changed. How I thought about myself changed. How I felt about myself changed. How I processed my life events changed. It was almost like God walked me through my entire life and gave me his perspective on it, so that I could heal, so that I could forgive, so that I could release, so that I could move on and move into the wonderful new that he had out ahead of me. Now, I will say that this is still a daily practice. However, it's one where I know where home is. I know where my home base is. So I'm not searching for that. I'm not searching for validation on the outside. I'm not looking for approval and likes and engagement on my social media. I'm not trying to get attention from anybody. I'm not trying to present something for attention. I'm literally focused on alignment and focused on being fed with daily bread every day, focusing on aligning with that and focusing on living out my truth to the best of my ability or capacity, right? So I know that my capacity can always increase. So if I stop reading the word, if I stop digesting the word, if I stop speaking the word, it's not going to be operative in my life. So I don't want that to stop. So I still have a practice, which is staying woke. Okay. So here's the steps again. To start being aware and to stay woke, you've got to have a self-awakening. And a lot of times this is something that shakes us, that wakes us up, that's brutal, to be honest, because we don't know that we're sleeping. We don't know that we need to wake up. Number two is you've got to do a self-confronting process. And this is daily. Look within yourself to where you're not aligning with truth, to where you're off, to where you need to check yourself, right? And get it together and then transform. And transformation is something that isn't really even a step. It's just a byproduct of you being aware and confronting yourself and partnering with God and what I call co-laboring with God. I have a book that's called God's Vibes Matter, Co-Laboring with God, because the way I was wired, it was all about, from a professional coaching program that I did, it was all about you being at the center of this wheel of life. And then there's all these different life areas, that's career, relationship, hobbies, health, whatever. And you'd rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like, this area is awesome, I'm so happy about it, and 1 being like, I don't even want to talk about it. But that was fundamentally flawed, in my opinion, because how am I going to look at my life and rate all these areas on how I think they're going and on how happy I am when I have a skewed mind? My mind could be completely off, meaning my rating could be completely off. And it's going to be extremely self-centered and probably selfish if I'm just focusing on me and how my life is going. So in this book, Co-Laboring with God, it's about God being at the center and redefining what these areas even are. So instead of relationships, what if it's divine assignments or divine connections? Those are very different. What if it's your divine calling or your divine purpose, right? So it's not led and directed by you necessarily. You partner, you co-labor, you cooperate, you collaborate with God, but it's not you calling all the shots. It's you coming into alignment with God's best plan for your life, because it's far greater than you dare ask, think, or imagine. So how can you think that you've got it all figured out? And you can't trust yourself because you know how you've fallen. You know where you come short. So just humble yourself and partner with God so you can walk out your transformation and get to these levels that He has for you. So transformation honestly doesn't seem, and in my opinion, it's not as hard as pushing and forcing and doing this hustle and this constant like fight to get ahead. It's more a surrender, a rewiring as you're reading and studying and learning and being still enough to do that. And then the willingness to actually walk that out. Now that you have new information, you're actually going to apply it in your life. So it's basically like when you're exposed to more, you're responsible for more. So you're responsible to activate that part of your character, since now you know to behave that way. You have a new standard. You have a new way of showing up. So transformation is the byproduct of being aware of your mind being renewed, being aware of this new way of thinking, of feeling, of expressing yourself, of loving, right? Then you confront these areas in your life that don't align with that. And then as you do that, you now have a new standard, a new way of operating. You kind of have a new operating system. It's almost like you restart your phone every day. We don't do that, which is why Apple does that for us. But it's similar to that. So after you sleep, it's like you get a reset every day. God's mercies are new every day. So you get a divine reset every day, but you've got to stay woke in order to apply all of this goodness in your life. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful to understand what can be different about how you're showing up and how it can be so much deeper and fulfilling for you and joy-filled. And then the other thing, going back to the very beginning, when you have this self-awareness operating in your life, you'll be able to direct yourself because you'll have Holy Spirit, Spirit-led guidance that you can come into agreement with. You'll be able to practice self-control. So you can practice good habits, with daily disciplines, right? And practice not responding the way you typically would. So if you typically respond with reaction and anger and frustration and speak some things that you can't say, you keep your peace, which is probably a lot harder than you can imagine, right? So you're able to direct yourself. You're able to practice self-control. Let me see where I'm at here. Whoops. It doesn't recognize my face. Okay. Then you're able to have self-esteem, because where self-esteem really comes from, it comes from keeping promises with yourself. So as you direct yourself, as you make better decisions, as you control your impulses, as you don't believe everything that you think, as you don't let your emotions derail you, you start to build confidence, because you've got a sense of pride about how you're showing up and about how you're stewarding what you carry, because you know the work that it takes, and you're actually proud because you've come so far. You're not who you were anymore, right? So then the last thing is you'll be able to actually be a conduit of God's love, and you'll actually be able to recognize God's love and receive it for yourself. And that doesn't mean that you won't encounter people that aren't loving, right? But you'll be able to pray for them. You'll still be able to extend love to them, and you won't internalize it or be as easily offended or taken off the path when somebody shows up in a way that is less than loving. Okay? So I hope this message blessed you. If this is blowing your mind, or if you want to get involved in more of this work, you can go check out a few of the books that I've written. A lot of them are on really reclaiming your spiritual authority and coming into the identity and the fullness of who you are, co-laboring with God. There's the daily devotional that I practice even to this day, about the daily practice of really connecting with God, because that's where it all starts. The process of transformation anyway. But you can visit julianapage.com to find those resources. I have a self-mastery course over there and a lot of other fun things, the podcast, so much stuff. So go check that out. And if you loved this video, make sure that you copy the link and send it with a friend, and make sure to subscribe so that you catch any new video that comes out. All right, until next time, guys, stay blessed.